Morning. We're gonna look at my guitar collection. I just went through a period of selling stuff off that I didn't really use, and so that kind of made me think maybe I should go ahead and just do a guitar collection video. So here we are. It's all good stuff. I've got good taste. We're gonna split it into two videos. If you make it past the first guitar and into the second one, can you give me a thumbs up so that I know that we're on the right path here with these videos? And subscribe if you want to see that second half, and let's check them out. You'll notice that I like red. So here's my favorite guitar. It's Heritage H-535, which is obviously a ES-335. And, the Heritage Company operates out of the old Gibson building at 225 Parsons. And, they are supposedly, old employees, maybe not anymore, because that was back in the 80s, using some of the old equipment, maybe not anymore, who knows, but they certainly know how to build, a Gibson style guitar. And so I had bought one of these brand new from Sweetwater, and it was not this one. It was a 2020 blonde, and I loved it. And then I got an opportunity to get another one in a trade, and that was the original Sunburst, same year, 2020. And so I did, and so I had two. And then, of course, I was, guitar stalking again online. And then I saw this one, and the price was so good, and I loved the H-535 so much that I was like, okay, gotta have it. And so, because I didn't have a red one, and so I got that. So then I had three of these. And then, of course, that became ridiculous pretty quickly because I wasn't using this style of guitar with my band. I was using a solid body. And so then I sold two, and I kept this one. Now this is a 2019, and it has the Seth Lover pickups in it, which are unpotted. And that does make a difference because live on a stage, depends on the acoustics. Sometimes it can squeal, and it's not musical squealing. It's hard to listen to squealing. And you've got to roll the volume down. And so I don't really like that. So it's not really a gigging guitar for me. It's an at-home, recording guitar, because these unpotted pickups have like a clarity to them that I really like, a very vintage, dynamic kind of sound to it. But these guys make great guitars. It's got a locking bridge, which Gibson don't do. This is more like a Faber kind of thing. It looks like a Nashville, but it locks, and it has a slimmer neck than I was really expecting it to have. And that's why I love it so much, because I use slim neck guitars. Tuners are kind of like your Grover 60s style tuner, and sounds fantastic. And so this is my favorite, and if I only had to keep one guitar, it would be this one. I love it. It just has that old-fashioned kind of vintage vibe to it, but it can do anything. It doesn't have too much bottom end like a Les Paul. It's nice and crisp in the top, nice and thwacky down in the bottom. and the mids are very clear. So number one here. So this guitar is special. You know, literally, it's an SG special. It's got the P90s. I had originally had an SG 61 standard from 2019 because when the new management came, I was really into that original collection. And so I bought a couple of things that first year. And then I sold the SG because the playing position was a little bit off for me. I was mainly playing Les Pauls. But I regretted it, and I was back to guitar stocking, back on Sweetwater, and I was looking, you know, at SGs again, trying not to spend, you know, the $2,000, and then I was looking at the specials, and they came with Burgundy Mist and Pelham Blue, both of which I was not into, but I kept stocking anyway, and then this popped up, and it was just out of nowhere, and they hadn't announced the new color yet. Turns out they would start doing, you know, this color, but it was a surprise, and the pictures were beautiful of this one. Stunning. The wood grain is perfect. The fretboard was gorgeous, and so I ended up getting it. And you know, I've kind of been up and down with it because of the P90s. I just haven't been sure whether P90s are for me because they don't really work in my band, and that tends to be the guitars that I use the most is when the ones that I'm using with my band. So, but I've been up and down with it, and now I love it again. I put a different bridge on it because those wraparounds are sketchy. In that one, they feel like they're barely hanging on, and when you string it up and put the tension on it, it's cocked, you know, forward. You know, like the strings are trying to rip it off the posts. I'm sure it wouldn't, but I just don't feel confident with it. And then also the intonation was not perfect with that zigzag on there. It's non-adjustable, and not every guitar is going to intonate to that, you know, lightning pattern. So that, and also it's very hard to string those, especially if you break a string and you're at a venue and you're trying to fish a string, you know, over the P90 and then under the bridge and get it through the little spot it's supposed to go through. It's impossible. And I was finding that when I restrung it with that original bridge on it, you have to take the whole bridge off, put the strings in, and then put the bridge on, and then continue on. So I didn't really like that. So I went with this hip shot. It's the Baby Grand, and you can string it through the back and intonate, and it all locks down. There is a little jiggle to it in the threads of the posts, but when you string it up, it doesn't, you know, but it's pretty tight, all things considered. Otherwise, I mean, it came with a bad volume pot, and I dealt with it for a long time, but then I finally changed out the volume pot for the bridge pickup. But I love this guitar. It's been hot and cold for me, but I'm hot on it these days. So let's listen to this one. All right, here we've got a 2023 SG Standard 61 with the little pick guard. And this is my main guitar for the bands that I play in. It's an 80s band, you know, so an SG works great because, you know, of course, AC/DC was a big presence in the 80s. And I love AC/DC, so that's cool with me. We play a couple of their songs, you know. It's got locking tuners on there, which, you know, look, you know, like it's been untouched, but they are aftermarket. You know, and I put a Faber locking bridge on it. These are all things because it's my main guitar that I really wanted to do all the bells and whistles on it, and it's made a big difference, to be honest. It's got all brass saddles, which, you know, I think on the high strings is a little bit too brassy, and they do offer the titaniums. So I'll do 3 titaniums on the top and 3 on brass on the bottom. Coming up in the future, I'll do that later, you know, but otherwise, it's a fantastic guitar, and I love it. This is my number 1, and I just don't see this going anywhere until I am just not playing guitar anymore. It's fantastic, plays amazing. The neck access, you know, is just incredible, and the action is so low because the neck relief is even, where on like a single cut, I find that most of the neck relief happens up here and then it gets very flat. And so with this, it just plays like butter. So let's check it out.